The man who called himself Brother Burke called the meeting to order. Eternal day. As far as Brian Elvis knew, that was the name of this cult he was attempting to infiltrate. The crowd responded. And endless nights. Brother Burke welcomed them to the orientation meeting. Brian had chosen to sit 3 rows back from the front and off to one side. There were a few dozen people in the room, all male, and all between their early 20s and maybe their 40s. Okay. He didn't bring a tape recorder, and they had everyone turn in their cell phones before entering. He would just have to do his best to remember all the details of this meeting. He didn't really expect the brothers of the Eternal Day cult to give away all their secrets in the orientation meeting. Brian Elvis, age 33, worked for a newspaper based out of Jacksonville, Florida. All right. It was a tabloid, really. The place had gone through some real belt tightening since its heyday in the 1980s. The Hidden Truth magazine had not redeemed its reputation much, but it managed to survive by going online. Brian was new to the staff. But was ambitious. Okay. Hidden Truth still did all the usual alien abduction and Bat Boy style articles. In recent years, it had done quite well with pandemic conspiracy theories, election fraud stories, and all the usual secret government plan stories. Brian thought they were neglecting cult and militia stories that were always a real hit for the blog. It just so happened that Eternal Day had set up shop in Rutledge County, South Carolina, his hometown, home stomping ground, let's say. This put Brian Elvis in a real good spot to show up in town, stay with his parents, and join these meetings without seeming like an outsider. Alright, hopefully they would get to the doomsday stuff before he had to live with his folks for too long. Brother Burke was saying we call ourselves the men who only seek the sun at night. This philosophy encompasses ideas of faith, humanism, science, and the metaphysical. We are all these things. Politics, religion, and I really misspelled politics. Let me see if I can fix that. Alright, politics, religion, and social constructs divide us along tribal lines. They steal our identities and our thoughts by replacing our will with the groupthink. They tell you what to believe, what to feel, when to be outraged, and when to forget the things that really matter to you. Burke went on, and Brian did his best to follow along. Alright, let me capitalize Brian's name here. And Brian did his best to follow along. There was nothing new here. All this stuff could be found on their website. Brian was surprised to discover how many cults and alternative faiths found a foothold along coastal South Carolina. He might have expected that more in Florida, California, or even out in the desert states. But South Carolina, let's say beaches, seem to be a magnet for these sorts of groups, and they all seemed to find followers. He wasn't sure what that said about his hometown. From working at the Hidden Truth tabloid, he knew Fuller Beach in Rutledge County also had a number of disappearances and more than its share of serial killers. Brother Burke finished up by saying, and now Brother Cantor will take you on a tour of the grounds. We'll talk again soon. Good luck seeking the sun. May you find your light as well. The crowd responded. Brother Cantor, a man almost too big and round for his flowing robes, led them along the cobble paths behind the meeting hall. The way was lit by solar lights that could be bought in any hardware store. The gardens consisted of hedges and native plants that were browning at the edges and losing leaves. The fountains and shrines consisted of water features and lawn ornaments that were probably bought at the nearest big box store. Brian mumbled to himself, "This cult is going in cheap." One of the potential recruits next to him, a guy who looked fresh out of high school. Okay, first of all, I spelled it wrong and it's not supposed to be a compound word. Alright, fresh out of high school, said, "Hey, watch it with that talk. That kind of talk." Brian nodded. "Yeah, sorry. Just had a long day." Eternal day, he thought. Okay, let me italicize that thought. Alright. The kid turned forward again with a scowl still over his face. Alright, let me spell scowl correctly. With the scowl still over his face, Brother Cantor went on about the returning sunrise shrine. One of Brian's parents' neighbors had the same pottery on their porch. Brian did need to watch it. If he got pegged as someone unfriendly to the teachings of the cult, he wouldn't get past this meeting and would have no story. The tour ended with Brian covered in a sheen of sweat and marked by insect bites. He swore this town was somehow hotter than Florida. Had to be. It couldn't be. But it had to be. They were divided into groups. Several recruits found themselves around the garden. Brian was with a brother Sims. Brian was with a brother Sims who took them into some sort of break room. Some sort of break room inside with a soda machine and a mounted TV that was dark in one corner. It was dark where it hung in the corner. I hope you good men aren't too disappointed to not be meeting in your breakout group in the garden itself. We kind of have to spread out now that we are growing so much. The scowling young man was part of Brian's small group. He seemed unhappy about that and about leaving the garden. Brother Sims took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a crunched empty can from the recycling bin behind him. He used it as an ashtray. used it as an ashtray. And okay, he used it as an ashtray before asking, "You guys mind if I smoke?" I thought that wasn't allowed. An older man in the group said. Okay. Alright, let me put commas where they go. Seem to have messed this up a little bit here. Alright, I also want to say exactly how many men there were. Scowling Young Men was part of Brian's small group of 5, counting himself. Alright. Counting himself and not counting the brother. Alright. I thought that wasn't allowed, an older man in the group said. Sims blew smoke up and out of the corner of his mouth. He flicked some ash into the bent opening of the can. We don't forbid anything. We strongly oppose certain practices we consider counterproductive. We discourage activities that don't that can be harmful. He held up the burning cigarette as if to offer an example. But we don't forbid anything. A couple of the men nodded along as if this were some deep truth they had come here to learn. The hidden truth. The hidden truth, Brian thought. This is your chance to ask your questions. Brother Sims said between drags. No questions are off limits, although some answers will be harder to find. All right. More nodding from the faithful dumb. The old man spoke up again. By the sound of his gravelly voice, Brian was kind of surprised. His first question wasn't whether he could bomb a smoke. The old man asked, "What are the goals of eternal day?" Sims licked his lips as smoke boiled from his nostrils. He almost seemed to be sizing the guy up. Brian wondered if this was going to be a screening process. Alright. Did you get booted for the wrong questions? Or for not asking any at all? Sims said, "They're written on the plaque out front when you came in." They're written on the plaque out front when you came in. If you can't read, there are programs at the community center down the road that can help. A shadow seemed to pass over the old man's face for a moment, and then was gone. "My apologies, brother. I will strive to be more observant. Can't hurt," Sim said. "But whatever gets you through the day." How many levels are there in the advancement within the faith? The young man asked without a scowl. "Life is eternal," Sim said. "The world will never end. You keep advancing." Alright, life is eternal, Sim said. The world will never end. You keep advancing through the game. You can quit the game by quitting life, but the game goes on. More of that nodding from the peanut gallery. Sims said, but there are 18 levels. You advance through the coursework. That will be explained more in the next meeting. What is the 18th level? Brian asked. Just want to skip the first 17, huh? Sims took another drag. Before Brian could make his apologies, Sims added, it's the Guru God level. You get your virgins at that level. Everyone exchanged a look after that. One of the former nodders now had a virgin-related question. Is that metaphorical or an afterlife promise? Or do you mean... No, Sim said. You get actual living and breathing virgin women for yourself. Has anyone reached that level? Another guy asked. Sims said, oh, a bunch. You wouldn't believe how many virgins we have stowed away around here and in members' houses. Of course, they don't stay virgins. Sims winked. Brian stammered out, are they here voluntarily? Sims narrowed his eyes. You think we have a net that we go out and scoop up virgins without their families noticing? No one answered. Sims rolled his eyes. It's all consensual. We don't go around netting people. The women are here because they are super impressed with 18th level brothers. Stunned silence followed. Do we have to put any money in? The young man asked. Sims shrugged. We accept donations, but all are made anonymously. We don't want to show any favor. Also, it helps us keep the books clean at tax time. Are there any other perks to the higher levels? One guy asked. Sims shook his head. What? Virgin's not enough for you? There are certain sacrifices. Let's say blood. There are certain blood sacrifices made and rituals observed. But there are rewards, like dragon sight. It took a moment, but finally the old man asked what dragon sight was. Sims said, you can see through walls. You can see into the past or many possible futures. You can see into the minds of others. You can see creatures, portals, and worlds between and beyond this one. Do you have this sight? The young man asked. Sims shook his head again. I'm just 14th level myself, but I believe with a few more sacrifices, I'll get there before Christmas. I'm super excited about Dragon Sight. Brian cleared his throat and asked, "Are you talking about literal blood sacrifices?" Sims flicked some ash into the crunched soda can and said, "You cannot unlock other worlds without the spilling of blood. Animals or people?" the old man asked. Sims said, "A lot of time it is animals, but human sacrifice is better. It carries more power." "Who are you sacrificing?" Brian asked. "Whoever we can find." Sims stared up as if contemplating. "Those we do have to catch. Sometimes runaways and vagrants, but also the relatives of powerful people. That power carries over to the spiritual world." All right. Everyone stared in shock. There was no more happy nodding along. All right. I think we're in the home stretch here. I kind of have an idea where we're going to end up. Sims just smoked and waited on the next question. Does anyone ever notice that people are missing? One guy finally asked. "No, because no one is missing." "Can you explain that?" the young man asked. His fervor for the faith seemed to have slipped. Sims said, "Sure." 16th level brothers and higher can raise the dead. Fortunately, with the memory loss that comes with resurrection, they don't even remember being sacrificed. They just go home a little confused. The men in the small group of recruits. The men in the small group of recruits stared in shocked silence. Sims added, "We've actually sacrificed a few people 5 or 6 times already. You get diminishing returns after a while, but power is power. Am I right?" After another silent pause, Sims went on. "Now, being new, you will be expected to help catch and hold onto sacrifices until time for the blood rituals. We can't keep them all here, so you'll need a way to keep them captive at your homes until we call for them. Whoever your roommates, significant others, or relatives." Okay, whoever your roommates, significant others, or relatives you live with are, you'll need to have a conversation with them about this new lifestyle. Brian started to ask a question, but only a squeak escaped. Sims went on. "Now, there are times the sacrifices and resurrections don't go off exactly as planned. Sometimes they come back as zombies or possessed by demons." Alright, hold on, let me fix something here real quick. All right. Sometimes they come back as zombies or possessed by demons. You will also need to store them at your places until we get things sorted out. So I need you to consider getting stronger doors and locks on at least one room in your Sims stopped and started to giggle. Soon he was holding his side and laughing. When he stopped, he snubbed out his cigarette and stood up. I kept a straight face as long as I could. That was all bullshit, but you guys are bullshitters anyway. What are you talking about? The young man asked. We know you guys are all reporters, Sim said. That's why we pulled you aside. Now you need to leave. We can help you find the door if you are having trouble. A couple larger men in robes stepped into the doorway. Brian and the other 4 men left out the front without being forced. What papers, no, let's say, what outlets do you guys work for? The young man asked. Everyone went around and shared their credentials. When Brian said he was with the Hidden Truth, everyone gave him the look he was used to. The reputation of the tabloid preceded itself. A couple of them decided to go to a diner together. Brian just returned to his parents' house and thought he'd probably head back to Jacksonville in the morning. Alright, let's do one more sentence. Alien abduction stories did not require this much work.